I'm starting to think we are looking at the complete and utter villain origin story of Willow. She is terrified right now, absolutely paralyzed by the fear of what is coming for her. And honestly, in my opinion, she has every reason to be terrified. Jack Brennan has vowed to expose her crimes, and I think Brennan is more than capable of pulling it off. Brennan is not some amateur that Willow can easily manipulate with tears or a victim complex. He has the background, he has the intelligence, and most importantly, he has the drive to tear down her carefully constructed facade. I suspect that Willow knows she is entirely out of her depth when it comes to a direct confrontation with Brennan. She can't just attack him or discredit him easily to cover up the truth. But here is the thing that I have been turning over in my mind. Willow isn't entirely alone in the shadows. Sidwell is hovering right there on the periphery. And I feel like Sidwell is more than capable of launching a devastating attack on Brennan if it comes down to it. Sidwell has the resources and the absolute ruthlessness to make Brennan disappear or silence him permanently. However, I'm starting to think Willow is much smarter and much more calculating than we have ever given her credit for. She is actively choosing not to use Sidwell right now. I feel like she is exploring other, much more complicated avenues to force Brennan into silence. Why? Because I think Willow knows that if she goes to Sidwell and asks him to take down a threat like Brennan, she will be indebted to him forever. I suspect she is terrified of becoming completely dependent on a man like Sidwell. It could be that she realizes a terrifying truth. The more of her dark secrets Sidwell knows, the more ammunition he has to manipulate her in the future. Sidwell isn't going to silence Brennan out of the goodness of his heart. He would use it as leverage to own Willow entirely. And in my opinion, Willow is desperate to maintain control of her own narrative. So, what is her alternative? I think her backup plan is shockingly cold-blooded. It could be that Willow is planning to locate Valentine and she is intending to use Charlotte as her pawn to do it. I'm starting to think this is how she plans to neutralize Brennan. If she can get her hands on Valentine's location by exploiting Charlotte, she might believe she can use that information or use Valentine himself as a bargaining chip to force Brennan to back off. This is just my interpretation, but the fact that Willow would even consider using a young girl like Charlotte to navigate this deadly game shows just how far she has fallen. But manipulating Charlotte and hunting down Valentine is a massive, dangerous undertaking, and Willow knows she can't do it in a vacuum. This brings me to what I feel is going to be one of the most explosive confrontations in General Hospital history. I suspect that Willow, feeling the walls closing in and realizing she needs an ally she can unconditionally control, is going to confess everything to her mother, Nina. And when I say everything, I mean everything. I think we are about to see a scene where the doors are locked, the curtains are drawn, and Willow finally drops the sweet, innocent act. I suspect Willow is going to look Nina dead in the eye and confess to the crimes she has been hiding. And the centerpiece of this confession? Drew. I have been analyzing Drew's condition for weeks now, and I'm starting to think we have all been completely misled. Drew is currently trapped in this horrifying, locked-in state. The narrative we have been fed is that he suffered a catastrophic medical event, a stroke. But I could be wrong, yet my gut is screaming that this is a lie. I feel that Willow is going to confess to Nina that she is the one who took Drew down. I suspect Willow will tell Nina that Drew never actually had a stroke at all. It could be that Drew's current agonizing paralysis is entirely the result of a specialized, highly undetectable neurotoxin, a poison that Willow deliberately administered to him. Think about the sheer horror of that. I think Willow orchestrated this entire medical tragedy. In my opinion, she needed Drew neutralized, silenced, but killing him outright would have drawn too much heat, too much investigation. So she opted for something far more sinister, trapping him inside his own body. Now, imagine Nina's reaction to this. I think Nina is going to be absolutely horrified. She will be blindsided, devastated, and incredibly angry. Nina has done some terrible things in her past, but the cold, calculated poisoning of someone, leaving them trapped in a waking nightmare, I feel like that crosses a line even for Nina. But I'm starting to think Nina's anger won't matter in the slightest, because Willow is already 10 steps ahead of her. I suspect Willow isn't confessing to unburden her soul. She is confessing to trap her mother. I think that as Nina starts to panic, threatening to go to the authorities or demanding that Willow turn herself in, Willow will drop the ultimate bombshell. I feel Willow will calmly and coldly explain to Nina that if she goes down for this crime, Nina is going right down to Pentonville with her. How? Well, this is just my interpretation, but I've been racking my brain trying to figure out how Willow could tie Nina to Drew's poisoning, and then it hit me. I suspect Willow has manufactured physical evidence that implicates her mother. It could be that weeks ago, before Drew's stroke, Willow manipulated a situation where she asked Nina to help her with Drew's medical care. Maybe she claimed it was a vitamin injection or a standard harmless medication he needed. I feel like Willow handed Nina the syringe, and Nina, trusting her daughter, finally happy to be included and bonding with Willow, administered the injection herself. Nina did exactly what her daughter asked, completely unaware that she was injecting a paralyzing neurotoxin into Drew's bloodstream. I think Willow kept that discarded syringe. I'm starting to think Willow sealed it away in a plastic bag, perfectly preserving Nina's fingerprints all over the weapon that caused Drew's locked-in syndrome. If this theory holds up, and again, I might be wrong, it is a masterclass in psychological abuse and manipulation. I think Willow will look at Nina and say, go ahead, call the cops. But when they test the syringe that paralyzed Drew, it's not my fingerprints they are going to find, it's yours. Nina is going to realize in that very moment that she has absolutely no way out. I feel like the realization will crush her. Her own daughter, the daughter she spent years yearning for, has framed her for a heinous crime as an insurance policy. In my opinion, Willow knows exactly what she is doing. She knows there is no retreat for Nina now. Once Nina is thoroughly trapped and broken, I suspect Willow will outline the rest of her problem. Brennan. I think Willow will explain that Brennan is closing in, and she will detail her grand plan to get Brennan off her back. She will tell Nina about her strategy to use Charlotte as bait to locate Valentine, hoping to use them as leverage against the WSB agent. Now, I think Nina, despite being blackmailed and terrified, is going to listen to this plan and absolutely draw a line in the sand. Nina will cover up Willow's crimes. She will help her daughter keep the secret of Drew's poisoning forever, because she has to, both to save herself and because of her twisted, desperate love for Willow. But I feel like the moment Willow mentions dragging Charlotte and Valentine into this mess, something inside Nina is going to snap. I suspect Nina will flat out refuse to let Willow lay a single finger on Valentine or Charlotte. In my opinion, Nina still has deep, complicated feelings for Valentine, and she has always been fiercely protective of Charlotte. The idea of Willow using a child, especially Valentine's child, as a pawn in this deadly game is going to trigger Nina's deepest maternal and protective instincts. I think Nina will realize that Willow's plan is sloppy, dangerous, and puts people Nina genuinely cares about in the crosshairs of ruthless people. So I'm starting to think Nina's going to come up with a counter proposal. She won't let Willow use Charlotte, and she knows Willow wants to avoid being indebted to Sidwell. I feel like Nina is going to look at the situation, analyze the board, and come to one chilling conclusion. The only way to truly protect Willow, protect herself, and protect Valentine and Charlotte is to eliminate the root of the problem. I think Nina is going to suggest that the best, cleanest way out of this nightmare is for Brennan to die. This is just my interpretation, but I truly believe we are going to see Nina pivot from a blackmailed victim to an active, lethal conspirator. I suspect Nina will decide that she is going to secretly execute a plot to murder Jack Brennan. She won't betray Valentine or Charlotte to Willow, and she won't let Willow risk everything on a convoluted blackmail scheme. Instead, I feel Nina will take matters into her own hands. It could be that Nina approaches Willow with this idea, and even if Willow hesitates, I think Nina will make up her mind. If Willow doesn't agree to do it together, I feel Nina will decide she is entirely capable of carrying out the assassination on her own. Nina's logic, in my opinion, will be terrifyingly sound. Brennan is the only one who knows enough to be a threat. If Brennan is dead, his investigation dies with him. The secret of Drew's poisoning remains buried forever. Willow avoids owing her soul to a monster like Sidwell, and Charlotte and Valentine remain safe and untouched. I suspect Nina is going to start studying Brennan. She will track his movements, figure out his weaknesses, and look for the perfect opportunity to strike. I'm starting to think we might see Nina utilizing some of the resources she still has access to, or perhaps she will rely on stealth and the element of surprise. Brennan is a trained agent, but I feel he might underestimate a desperate mother backed into a corner. He might be looking out for Sidwell's goons, but would he suspect Nina Reeves slipping something lethal into his drink at the Metro Court? Would he anticipate Nina tampering with his car? I think Nina is going to target Brennan with a laser-focused intensity. She knows that all it takes is one fatal blow, one accident, and this entire house of cards is stabilized. It could be that Brennan, anticipating an attack from highly trained operatives, is completely blindsided and suddenly taken down by Nina. If this happens, it shifts the entire dynamic of the show. I feel like we are watching two women descend into absolute darkness, bound together by a toxic mix of blackmail, secrets, and murder. Let's unpack this a little more, because the psychological implications of this theory are staggering. I think we need to look at Willow's mental state. For years, she played the role of the moral compass, the victim of Shiloh, the sweet school teacher and nurse, but I feel like under that surface, a profound darkness has been festering. I'm starting to think that the trauma she has endured hasn't made her stronger. It has mutated her sense of morality. In my opinion, taking down Drew wasn't just a crime of passion or a spur-of-the-moment mistake. The use of a neurotoxin implies intense premeditation. I suspect Willow had to research it, acquire it, and carefully plan the administration. This tells me that Willow is operating with a level of cold calculation that rivals the most hardened mobsters in Port Charles. And then there is the manipulation of Nina. I feel like Willow resents Nina on a cellular level, even as she accepts her help. By framing Nina for Drew's poisoning, Willow achieves two things. She secures her own freedom by holding a gun to Nina's head, and she fundamentally punishes Nina for all the past grievances. I think Willow enjoys the power she suddenly has over her biological mother. I could be wrong, but I see a glint of sadistic satisfaction in the way I imagine Willow delivering that ultimatum. We are in this together now, Mum. It's chilling. Now let's look at Nina's side of the equation. I think Nina has spent so long desperately clawing for Willow's love and acceptance that she is willing to endure almost any abuse from her. But I feel like the realization that Willow manipulated her into poisoning Drew will break something fundamental in Nina's psyche. Yet, paradoxically, it won't push Nina away. It will lock her in. I suspect Nina's thought process will be twisted by her own trauma. She lost so many years with her child. She is not going to let Pentonville take Willow away now, even if Willow is a monster. In my opinion, Nina's decision to kill Brennan isn't just about self-preservation. It's a deeply twisted act of maternal sacrifice. I'm starting to think Nina will view killing Brennan as the ultimate proof of her devotion to her daughter. You made a mess. You trapped me, but I will still kill for you to keep you safe. It's a terrifying dynamic. And why is Nina so adamant about protecting Valentine and Charlotte from Willow's scheming? I feel that despite all the bad blood and the breakups, Valentine is the only person who ever truly saw Nina's darkness and accepted it. And Charlotte is an innocent in Nina's eyes. I suspect Nina looks at Charlotte and sees a chance to protect a child in a way she couldn't protect Willow. I think Nina knows that if Willow starts using Charlotte to get to Valentine, the blowback will be catastrophic. Valentine is lethal when his daughter is threatened. If Willow crossed that line, I feel Valentine would destroy Willow without a second thought. So, in a weird way, by stopping Willow from going after Valentine, Nina is saving Willow from Valentine's wrath too. This brings us back to Brennan. I think Brennan represents the ultimate reckoning. He is the immovable object standing in the way of Willow's lies. I suspect Brennan has already put the pieces together regarding Drew's condition. He probably has access to WSB medical files and toxicology reports that local Port Charles doctors missed. I feel like Brennan has been taunting Willow, letting her know that he sees right through the poor paralysed Drew narrative. This is why I think Willow is panicking so intensely. She can't gaslight Brennan. She can't cry her way out of it. And this is exactly why Nina's lethal solution becomes the only viable path forward in their minds. Imagine the tension as Nina begins to stalk Brennan. I'm starting to think we will get scenes where Nina is watching him from afar, learning his routines. Does he take a specific route for a morning run? Does he have a standing reservation at a specific table where his back is exposed? I feel like the writers are setting us up for a shocking climax where the elegant, emotional Nina Reeves transforms into a cold-blooded assassin. It could be that Nina manages to get into Brennan's hotel room. I suspect she might not use a gun that's too messy, too loud. I think she might try to beat Willow at her own game. What if Nina finds a way to use a different kind of toxin on Brennan? Or what if she stages an accident? I feel like a confrontation on the docks or on the roof of the hospital is highly likely. But here is a wild thought. What if Brennan is onto Nina too? I could be wrong, but Brennan is highly trained. I think he might notice Nina tailing him. I suspect he might confront her, completely underestimating her intent. He might think she is just there to beg for Willow's life, not realizing she is there to end his. I feel like this underestimation could be Brennan's fatal flaw. He is preparing for an attack from a syndicate or Sidwell, not a desperate mother in designer heels. In my opinion, if Nina successfully takes out Brennan, it changes the fabric of General Hospital. It binds Nina and Willow in a covenant of blood and secrets that can never be broken. They would both be murderers, both covering up horrific crimes for the sake of their twisted family dynamic. And what about Drew in all of this? I feel a profound sense of dread when I think about his character. If my theory is correct, he is fully conscious, trapped in his own body, screaming silently while the woman who did this to him walks free and plots further murders. I suspect there will be subtle clues in Drew's scenes, a blink, a twitch of a finger that will show he is trying to communicate the truth. I think someone, eventually, is going to notice. Maybe it will be Jason, maybe it will be Carly. But for now, Drew is the silent, tragic victim of Willow's dark evolution. I'm starting to think that Sidwell's role in this is going to be the wild card. Even if Nina decides to kill Brennan to keep Willow from owing Sidwell, I feel like Sidwell isn't going to just fade into the background. I suspect Sidwell already knows what Willow did to Drew. A man with his connections probably knows everything that happens in Port Charles. I think Sidwell is sitting back watching Willow and Nina scramble, finding it highly entertaining. It could be that even if Nina kills Brennan, Sidwell will step in and say, "Congratulations, you took care of the agent. But I still know what you did to Drew, and now I know your mother killed a federal agent to cover it up." If that happens, Willow's entire plan to avoid Sidwell's manipulation blows up in her face. I feel like she and Nina will end up owing Sidwell anyway, but instead of just one crime hanging over their heads, they will have two massive felonies for him to use as blackmail. This is just my interpretation, but the web of lies is getting so thick that it is bound to suffocate someone. I think Willow is operating on pure adrenaline and panic, making decisions that are increasingly psychotic. I feel Nina is operating on misplaced guilt and maternal desperation, leading her to cross lines she never thought she would cross. I want to dive deeper into the syringe theory, because I feel this is the crux of Willow's hold over Nina. Think about the timeline. Let's speculate on how this could have happened. I suspect Willow invited Nina over under the guise of finally letting her help with something important. Nina, desperate for any crumb of affection from her daughter, practically ran over. I think Willow had Drew in a vulnerable state. Maybe he was asleep, or maybe he was already feeling unwell from a smaller precursor dose of whatever Willow was giving him. I feel like Willow handed Nina the syringe, telling her it was a B12 shot or a necessary blood thinner. "I can't do it, Mum. My hands are shaking. I'm too stressed. Please, can you just administer this for me?" I suspect Willow played the vulnerable, overwhelmed nurse card perfectly, and Nina, wanting to be the supportive mother, took the syringe. I think the camera work in our minds should focus on Nina's fingers pressing the plunger, the lethal substance entering Drew's line, and Willow watching from the doorway with cold, detached precision. Then, I feel like Willow quickly took the empty syringe back. "I'll dispose of this in the sharps container," she probably said. But she didn't. I suspect she slipped it into her pocket. The moment she did that, she owned Nina. I'm starting to think that Willow has that syringe locked in a safe deposit box, or hidden somewhere completely secure, just waiting to be unleashed if Nina ever steps out of line. This level of premeditation is what convinces me that Willow is no longer a victim. She is the villain of this story. I think she learned from Shiloh, she learned from Nell, and she learned from the mobsters around her. She internalized all that trauma and weaponized it. Now, let's bring it back to Nina's proposed assassination of Brennan. I feel like we have to consider the logistics. Nina is wealthy, she has resources. Could she hire someone? I suspect she won't. I think Nina knows that hiring a hitman creates a paper trail, creates another person who knows the secret. If she is going to protect Willow and keep Valentine and Charlotte out of it, she has to get her own hands dirty. I'm starting to think Nina will try to lure Brennan into a trap. Perhaps she will contact him claiming she has evidence against Willow that she wants to trade for immunity. I feel she would set up a meeting in a secluded location, maybe an abandoned warehouse down by the docks, or a cliffside road outside of town. I suspect Brennan, driven by his desire to close the case and expose Willow, will take the bait. He might think Nina is cracking under the pressure. I think when he arrives, he won't find a frightened woman ready to confess. He will find a woman backed into a corner ready to strike. It could be that Nina uses her car as a weapon. I feel a vehicular homicide would be easier for her to stomach than pulling a trigger. Imagine Nina waiting in the dark, the engine revving, and as Brennan steps out of his vehicle, she floors it. Or perhaps, as I mentioned earlier, she manages to drug him. Nina has access to medical supplies through her connections to the hospital board and her daughter. What if she slips a heavy sedative into his coffee at Kelly's when he isn't looking, follows him as he drives away, and waits for him to pass out at the wheel, causing a fatal crash? In my opinion, however she decides to do it, it will be messy and it will take a massive psychological toll on Nina. But I think she will rationalize it every step of the way. I'm doing this for Willow. I'm doing this for Charlotte. I feel like she will repeat these mantras to herself as she plans a murder. I could be wrong about the exact method, but the emotional trajectory feels incredibly accurate to me. The writers have pushed Nina to the brink so many times, but this covering for her daughter's psychopathic crimes by committing murder herself is the ultimate point of no return. And let's not forget about Valentine in all of this. I suspect that Valentine is entirely unaware of the danger his daughter Charlotte was almost put in by Willow's initial plan. If Valentine ever finds out that Willow was planning to use Charlotte as bait, I feel like Brennan will be the least of Willow's problems. Valentine would scorch the earth to destroy Willow. I think Nina knows this. This is a massive part of why I feel Nina steps in to kill Brennan. She is intercepting Willow's plan to involve Charlotte, knowing that if Willow follows through with it, Valentine will kill Willow. Nina is, in her own twisted way, trying to save everyone by sacrificing one WSB agent. This entire situation is a powder keg. I'm starting to think the explosion is going to take out half of Port Charles. If Brennan dies, the WSB will swarm the town. They won't just write off an agent's death as an accident. I feel like the investigation into his murder will inevitably circle back to the people he was investigating, Willow and Nina. I suspect that in her attempt to bury the secret forever, Nina is going to inadvertently shine a massive federal spotlight on herself and her daughter. They might solve the immediate problem of Brennan breathing down their necks, but I think they will invite a much larger, much more dangerous problem to town. And all the while, Drew remains trapped. I feel like his storyline is the most heartbreaking piece of this dark puzzle. I suspect that eventually the toxin in his system will begin to degrade, or a new doctor will run a specific toxicology screen that reveals the truth. I think the moment the medical community realizes Drew was poisoned, the walls will instantly close in on Willow. But until that happens, we are going to watch a horrifying game of cat and mouse with Nina transforming into a killer to protect a daughter who might be beyond saving. To wrap up all these thoughts, I just want to say again, I think this is the direction the show is heading, but I could be entirely wrong. This is just my interpretation of the subtle clues, the dialogue shifts, and the dark history of these characters. I feel like General Hospital is setting the stage for a massive dark climax where secrets, blackmail, and murder collide. I suspect we are going to see Willow's true colours fully exposed to her mother, and we are going to see exactly how far Nina Reeves is willing to go to protect her blood. It could be that by trying to fix Willow's horrific mistakes, Nina seals both of their fates forever. Let me know what you guys think, because my mind is spinning with the possibilities of this dark, twisted storyline.